This is Joe from ArtAlienTV. Now today I've got something cool to show you, and it's very similar to something I showed about 4 or 5 years ago. And the video that it's similar to is this one down here. If you scroll down my channel page to best videos here, I put this video near the front so we can see it. It's called Buried City Mars. Buried City Structures, Gale Crater South, right? Now, that was done about 4 years ago, and it shows these dunes in the south of Gale Crater where the Curiosity rover is, but not exactly where that rover is, about 5 or 10 miles south of where it is, on the other side of the mountain, at the other side of Mount Sharp, and it shows these dunes. In this video, I also go into how these dunes form, and the standard explanations that NASA give us and that geologists give us on how these form on Mars and on Earth as well. But these are highly unusual, and I don't think all of them are natural. And this is the actual Gigapan I showed in that video. Mars Buried City, Gale Crater South, right? And this was taken by the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, and this is the area that I showed. Now, not only have we got these weird angular dunes like this, which look artificial, or at least partly. There's long rows of them, but there's loads of like squares in the ground like we have here. We've got one here, like rectangles in the ground. This is a buried city here. Not only have we got these weird dune things, but we got structures in the ground which are ruined and buried, and we're seeing into the ground, okay? These are all over the place, and when you start looking around on this one, you're going to see loads and loads of stuff. I've marked a lot of it on here, but this will make a lot more sense if you watch this video, okay? So this is why I put it there, so you can find it easily. I'll also put a link to it underneath as well, so you can check it out, because it goes into the sort of dune theory and how they're supposed to form. But sometimes we see things that don't conform to the norms. And that's what I'm going to show you today. And I found some similar ones on a different part of Mars. And they're very, very strange. Now, this is one Gigapan here, satellite image, and I've got another one here, which has got the raw one on the left and an enhanced colour version on the right. The colour version obviously is a lot better. You'll see a lot more. It's had added contrast as well. I've enhanced the contrast so you can see the shapes a lot better and sharper and clearer. And this is what we have. Now, this is the main one that I spotted first. And I thought, that's interesting. We have a formation in a sort of crater here. Now, these may well be natural, a lot of these. I'm not saying all of these are unnatural, but some of them look very, very strange indeed, and look very angular and very symmetrical and have some strange features. Now, these look fairly normal, but they're a nice formation. We've got these angular dunes in formation. Now, this isn't that clear. I've got an enhanced clip of that. I'm going to show you in a second. And then there's these down here on the bottom right. Look at these. Now, there's a join there. You can see a join where they're not matched up very well. These images are taken in strips and then put together. And sometimes they don't line them up properly. You can see where there's a mismatch there. Okay, but basically, what I think some of these are is possibly structures. I can't prove that. You'd have to go down on the ground and dig into some of this stuff. But some of this stuff is just too weird and too angular to be natural. They look way too... In fact, these are much better, I think, than the ones in Gale Crater. These are sharper images, and we're a bit closer. And we can see the actual hardness of these dunes. They've got hard edges. They're not rounded, they're not soft edged, they're not elongated and sort of smooth. They've got hard edges and they've got hard angles. Lots and lots of right angles. This is that formation I started with. This has been cleaned up a bit, brightened up a bit, and contrast added. Okay? Absolutely insane. Now, these look fairly normal because we've got all different sizes and they're all sort of a bit more random around the bottom here. I thought, yeah, okay, kind of interesting, but probably natural, right? You do get a lot of sculpting of stuff on the ground by the wind, but some of these are hard to explain. Now I'm going to flick through some of these. This was crazy. This lot here, I mean, look at these here. We've got long angular ones that go into sort of shorter ones here. They get shorter at this end on the left, and they get sort of fatter and longer on the right here, elongated. Some of them are just crazy, and some of them have got steps, like this one here. It's got steps coming up here. And some of them have steps going into these kind of parts here, in between these uprights. Now, we're looking down on the surface here, but we're not looking straight down. And if you go on the actual, click on the Gigapan at the top, I'll show you that now actually. Let's go to the Gigapan. Let's go up here. If you click on this at the top here, it will take you to the actual page, and it will tell you the angles that the pictures were taken from, the satellite images. Possible flow feature in Terrena Terra, that's the official name, and it shows some of them here. These are near the top of the image, these ones here, but they're not very clear, the clip they've shown, and they don't explain anything here whatsoever. But it does give you the sort of phase angles and stuff like that. Projection, emission angle, phase angle. Now, yeah, the phase angle is 56. That's pretty steep. In other words, we're looking at an angle across and down rather than straight down. Okay, but that's pretty high. So we're getting a good idea of the three-dimensional shape of these objects on the ground, these things or structures on the ground, possible dunes, whatever they're supposed to be. You can see into them. So we're not looking straight down. And when you look at the actual Gigapan, you can see that we're looking down at an angle and across like this, over 50 degrees, which is quite a lot. So we're looking into them. We're not just looking straight down. But these have got really hard edges, and you can see that a lot of them have got steps, what appear to be steps going into these parts in between. Right, well, let's go back to the folder because it's better to look at them here. Now, this is the meme I did. This is the most interesting part to me, because we got this part here near the top, where we have these little steps going in. Now, a lot of this is obviously sand, and a lot of this may be very cold, a lot of it may be frozen, but that doesn't really explain what we're looking at here, I don't think, because some of these things are just too weird. They're absolutely insane. And when you start looking at them, some are quite incredible, where we've got sort of arched ones here with a pointy arch at the top here. And then we got ones with details inside, like you could go in there with steps and weird things like that. Okay, but we can't quite see them in enough detail to get right into them. You can't zoom in that far, unfortunately. But there are some crazy examples here, and this is a much larger area where you've got a whole group of them which are kind of linked up here, and then a large group in the middle, then another group over here. Could these actually be, as I suggested in the original video all those years ago, could some of these actually be structures that people lived in and they've got sand drifted up against them? Now, if you look carefully, these have got actual kind of like, they're almost like millipede dunes where they have these kind of furry bits on top or stringy textures coming off them. Look at these here. And what I'm going to do actually, I'm going to darken this right down and turn the contrast up even more so that you can see that better. Now look at these up here on the right. We've got these feathery parts. They look like feathers. And then we have uprights, which are not symmetrical and not completely straight, but they're very uniform, some of them here. But then we have much more random ones down here, which are smaller and in sort of cascading terraces, right? With what look like ribs or steps or something going on here. Then we have a load more over here, which are a bit more random down here. So they're in multiple levels, right? And sitting on top of each other, but they're not directly on top of each other because we're looking at an angle, but they are in terraces, right? Absolutely insane. But these are absolutely crazy, some of them. They're really hard-edged, they're sharp-edged, and the uprights are very straight. Some of them got curves to them as well. They've got sort of scooped out curves. Absolutely insane. So I really don't know with these. If we could get in closer and have a proper look into these a bit more, we could determine if there was anything intelligent in there. But we can't do that. This is about as far in as we normally get. Now these are more like the ones you see in Gale Crater, where you see them in patches, but they're not all joined up and they're not in terraces necessarily. Now these may well be natural, but these have also got very hard edges. Now the image has been sharpened up a bit, obviously, but look at these hard edges here. Now if this was a sand dune, would it have a hard edge with a very bright part at the top like that? Now I appreciate the sun's coming from above here and it's kind of catching the top part. That makes sense. But why are these so hard? Surely sand dunes would be softer and more rounded and much less angular than this. Now I know the gravity is different on Mars and there's extreme wind conditions, that kind of thing. It's very cold most of the time. But that doesn't really explain why these are so hard. Very hard edges, very smooth on top. And when you actually look at the negative, you can see those uprights really well here at the top. Look how straight these are. Now they're not all the same size, they're all similar sizes, but they've got smaller ones in between, and they look symmetrical until you zoom right in like we have here, and you can actually see that they're not all the same size, but they do have a lot of uniformity, and you can actually see the details of these step-like features here coming in to that one there, right? Pretty crazy, but a lot of this is probably just frozen sand, of course. But what if these structures were built to look like sand dunes from above, to protect the occupants from possible attack from above, as I suggested and other people suggested when I made that first video 4 years ago? What if they're disguised? And what we're seeing are the remains of some of these structures, but they've also got a lot of sand drifted up to them and over them as well, which is kind of masking some of the detail, right? So we've got a lot of very strange details here, and a lot of it doesn't look, to me, completely natural because the edges are just too hard. If you look at the Sahara or any desert on Earth, like the Atacama Desert in Chile, which is very similar to Mars, you don't get this. Now, I appreciate Mars is different. It's colder, it's way colder, it's windier, but the air pressure is very low anyway, so the wind doesn't actually do that much. And the gravity is a lot less. It's only 1/3 of Earth's. So things can get bigger before they fall over under gravity. In other words, things like dunes could get taller, people could get a lot taller. And structures could get a lot taller before they sort of fall over from being overweight or whatever. So you do get unusual things, and you often see with rocks on Mars that they're sort of perched on the edge of cliffs precariously, which you wouldn't see on Earth because they would just fall down. But on Mars, of course, they've got less gravity, so things don't tend to fall down in the same way as easily as they might on Earth. So I've got a whole bunch of clips here, but basically you can check these Gigapans out and look at this yourself. This one is probably slightly better quality, this one. And you can use the hover zoom magnifier and look at these yourself. They've got some crazy details, and they look a bit like millipedes. And I have shown millipede dunes before, but they are a bit different to this. They appear to have legs and stuff coming out of them, and branches and stuff like that. And they look more organic. These look like actual structures that are half buried and are too straight and too angular in many cases to look natural. Okay, But there's loads to look at here. So we got this one, which is like a double one here, and then we've got this one here, which is the raw one with the enhanced one on the right. Okay, and I've marked some of the areas, but you're going to find loads of weird stuff in here. And then we have this one, which is Gale Crater South, where we have some similar ones with these points to them. But these look a little bit more random in many cases, but some are very angular like this. But they're not as sharp, I don't think. They don't look quite as detailed. It's not bad, the detail in this, but it's not as good. Okay? And what they did remind me of are the ancient windmills that you see on Earth in places like Iran. There's a place called Nashtifan, and you have these upright windmills. And they're all kind of built on top of these small houses or structures on the ground. And they basically use them to mill flour, okay? But instead of big tall windmills with windmills that go around like this, these are built the other way round on a sort of on an axis sticking up, and then they spin like this, okay? And there's loads of them here. And when you look at these, now if you were to build a load of these on the ground in long rows, and then sand drifted over them over hundreds or thousands of years, what would they look like? Would they look like what we're looking at today? They're not necessarily going to be the same as this, if they are anything like this. But this is just a kind of image comparison to something on Mars which may be unrelated completely, but they look kind of similar when you look down on them like this, at a similar kind of angle here, right? From above. They do look similar. There we are. So we got structures at the bottom with these windmill-like things that spin around, and they've got these sort of angular wall parts behind the little windmill thing here to catch the wind, and then the wind then kind of scoops round like this, increasing the spin on the little windmill thing, right? Now, Mars is a very windy place, and that would be a very good type of technology to use on the ground here if you were wanting electricity or any kind of energy to use, because it's pretty windy most of the time on Mars. And as long as these structures were light, the windmills were quite light, because the air pressure isn't very high, as long as they were quite lightweight, they would spin really well, as long as they weren't too heavy, right? And you could actually get quite a lot of energy from that and use it for all sorts of things. But this section here was really cool. I really like this part because we got multiple terraces here, and some of these are just insane. Look at those. They are absolutely crazy. And they've got this kind of feathery effect on top here. You can see that just there and here. So were these built and are they kind of drifted in sand, or are they just completely natural? That is the question. The ancient windmills of Nashtifan, you can just look that up. I've just put windmills in Iran and it will come up. That's an easier search to do. There's an actual page here about them with close-ups. And when you look at these from above, they do look kind of similar. So is it possible that what we're looking at on Mars are buried houses or structures, which are like these ones below, and we're seeing some of the uprights above, which are still intact? Is that possible? I think anything's possible on Mars. I've shown over the years so many remains and cities buried and remains on the ground and all sorts of structures, including pyramids and ziggurats, that kind of thing. Multiple cities I've shown, city areas, buried and destroyed mainly. So I would say anything's possible, and some of these ancient technologies are simple and effective, and even if you were quite poor, you could build this and use the energy from it. Okay, it's a pretty cool solution they have here. It's quite basic, but it works. It's workable technology, and if we're to colonize Mars, it's the sort of thing we need to look into and utilize, perhaps. Okay, low density windmills that don't weigh much, can spin pretty fast and give you quite a good bit of energy, right? So there we are. So check these links out. There'll be links to all this in the description below and in the comments as well. So you can go there and check them out. But take a look yourself. Like I said, if you haven't got it, you may want to get hover zoom magnifier to look at these up close. Okay, because some of this stuff is just quite incredible. Okay, check this out. Now these are supposedly just natural dunes as well. Okay, according to NASA. But when you look at these, we have these long branches in the ground that seem to go on forever, right? And in the colour one, the left one here is enhanced contrast, the right one's raw. But they're amazing colours. Now, a lot of these are actual dunes, but when you actually look at the area below, these just go on and on and on in long, long branches. And there's another version of that here, which is the black and white or monochrome version. You can see how much of this stuff there is. Look at this. Do those look like normal dunes to you, or are these actual huge vines that are growing along the surface which are iced over? They go on forever. And this is only a section of it, right? Now they break up at the top here, but then they just go into long, long branches, which are sort of in parallels like this, which then join in between. Look at that. Unbelievable. So I've got loads of stuff like that to look at on here, as well as stuff on the ground like we have in Gale Crater. Here's one of the latest Gale Crater things that I spotted just like yesterday or the day before. And this is a view from the bottom of Mount Sharp, looking at some of the mounds here. But if on the ground there's this thing, which seems to be a corroded metal box section or something similar with metal here. Look at this, corroded metal with amazing detail actually. But this thing here looks like a box here, which is kind of filled in mud, which is then solidified, but we've got parts of it here, like a corner here and parts of it here. And you can actually see, if I zoom out and then use the hover zoom magnifier, you can see there's a corner part here and another piece sticking up. And we've got all this material down here, which looks very much like iron or something similar. It's all corroded. So that's what we're seeing at the moment by the Curiosity rover. That is similar to things I've shown before, and I have shown hollow boxes before, like big metal boxes which are kind of hollow. You can actually see into them and they're all kind of rusted and corroded. And some of them are huge. Some of them are quite big. Some of them are like 5 or 6 feet long. And these are quite common. I've shown quite a few of these. So go through my channel and you'll find some. So check the links out. As I said, thanks for watching. Clips coming up now.